Hi guys, it's your two poly chicks, Tiffany and Cindy again. And as always, we want to remind you to hit that notification button, hit the like, subscribe, and if you dislike the video, then you can also put that thumbs down. So
today, but tell us why. Tell us why, right?
Yeah, and tell us why, of course, because we like to make content that you enjoy, and we also want to improve. So give us some input. Today we're going to talk about what's going on right now with the Olympics. We're in the middle of the Olympics. So when this episode airs, I think it's going to be like maybe the third to last day of the Olympics. So we know that countries vie for the Olympics like years in advance. They have to bid, and then they have to show whatever it is that they can do and create to make a successful Olympics. So we say it's about the money, and of course it brings in a lot of money, a lot of tourist dollars, and this year because nobody's going to Tokyo, but they already built it.
Even Tokyo don't want to go to Tokyo.
Yeah, and that's the thing. No one's going, no one's there. So they've already prepared and built it, and they're doing a great job, in my opinion, with what they have. Basically, hosting the Olympics, it's like one of those large scale mega project things. They have to build certain coliseums and stadiums and all of that other stuff. And the notion if you build it, they'll come. And that's always the case. So I wanted to just jump into that real quick, because the infrastructure, what they say is the infrastructure, like with China, when they built that bird's nest for the Olympics in 08, they were supposed to be reused, but most of the time it's not reused. Most of the time it just lies dormant, and it's like
it becomes a fixture.
I think one of them, I feel like it was it was for the Winter Olympics, and they were showing how decayed it was, and because really, are you going to use these facilities after the Olympics if your country
not in your daily life, not in daily life? Like
you're not snowboarding.
You're not going to use a bird structure.
What do you call that thing? The luge, where they all sit. I forgot what the name of it is.
I don't know what
it is. All sit in that thing, and they go down that pipe like on the ice. This is winter, but where they all go down on that ice in that little boat thing. You're not gonna, like, people are not doing that as an activity every day. So the infrastructure, they say that it's supposed to keep giving, but if you're not using that stuff, like you're not using the tennis facilities and the swimming facilities, then what's the purpose of it?
Well, you have to make that statement, because if you, as a business plan, you have to say something's going to have longevity. You can't be like, oh, we're only going to use this once, and we're going to pay $1 billion for it, and we're only going to use it once. It would be a terrible business plan. So you got to say we're going to reuse it, even if you know you're not.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm looking, as it says, the Bird's Nest, which was the stadium that was used in Beijing, is open, but it's for a fee. So they're using it for like tours and stuff like that. I think a lot of the times the facilities just basically go to waste, or they're used very minimally. And LA, when the Los Angeles Olympics came, they were praised. Well, first they were, condemned for having it in existing facilities. How dare you? But
how dare you recycle?
Yeah, later on they were praised because it's like we still use these facilities. So it's like, well, why build something when we have the necessary capacity stadiums here? So that was one of the things. It's like, well, a lot of times the money doesn't come back as they expect because they're not using these facilities. And even if you think you're going to gain like more tourists or more people coming to do these, it's not stuff that we normally do. I don't normally go skateboarding or surfing. Well, some people do, but not in Tokyo. So I probably won't go back for that event.
No.
I wanted to talk about some of the statements from the Olympians. I know a lot of people are making statements on what they believe, and people say that we always talk about this, how sports and politics shouldn't mix, but back in the 70s, there's a lot of sports and politics. When you go back to the guy that ran, I forgot his name. Oh my gosh. Was it Jesse Owens?
Jesse Owens, please. Yeah. Arthur Ashe, Jesse Owens, Muhammad Ali. Plenty of people have spoke out and protest, or even not even musicians. I remember Ray Charles refused to play in Georgia.
Yeah.
Like just like
Yeah.
people, when you have a star voice, you should use it for good.
Yeah.
You have a
Yeah.
star voice.
Yeah, and specifically like the Olympians, today in today's Olympics, or the 2020, even though it's 21 Olympics, they are like, there was a Costa Rican girl who did a Black Lives Matter tribute. She kneeled and put her fist in the air. If we remember there's actually a statue of the guys from I think it was the 70s, where they took their shoes off and they put their fists in the air. That's at the Smithsonian Museum for Black History.
This was a very popular thing to do, to go like this. It became very popular in sports events, especially the Olympics.
Well, they were doing that to protest. They were protesting.
Right, but I'm saying it was a popular way. It was a popular symbol. When you saw it, you knew what they meant.
Okay. Yeah, like basically, I don't know. I don't want to say Black Power, because when you hear that,
that's pretty much what you meant, though.
Yeah.
But it is what they meant. It is what they meant.
Well, I guess, and of course, it has a negative connotation in some aspects, but right now, what we're protesting, or what the Olympians, some of them are protesting, is the unequal treatment that they feel they're facing. And when you have people from Costa Rica adding that to their routine, like the girl did a dance. I didn't get a chance to watch the entire thing, but she did a dance and incorporated it into her routine, because they weren't able to protest per se while they're performing, but she said it's part of her routine. So if it's a part of your routine, then you gotta
because it's a form of creativity. So why do you get to stifle my voice? I'm an artist. This is my art. You can't tell me what my art means, represents. You can't. You thought of it that way. I can't tell you how to interpret it, but I'm telling you that this is my art. This is how I expressed it. You have the right to interpretation.
Yeah, and a lot of people are angry about the flag, like, how dare you disrespect the flag and turn away or not put your hand on your heart. And one thing about America, USA, the good old USA, is we have the right to protest, regardless of when and where you think it's appropriate. That's our right. We love to point out that we have those rights. So
we have those statements.
Yeah, they're like, but no other countries are doing it. But then when you have Costa Rica doing it, and you have other countries doing it, it's like, well, they actually are.
I'm always fascinated with how America treats the flag like it's an actual person and not the people in the country. So the flag, you can't burn it, you can't look at it, you can't touch it, you got to worship it, you got to put it in your Bible, you got to do this to it. It's the flag. But it represents people.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be how do you represent this idea of unity to the flag? You turn around and pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands. That's what it says, for which it stands. So it stands for the people. And if the people are unsatisfied, right? If the people are unsatisfied, guess what? You've made a way for people to demonstrate that they're unsatisfied. Protest.
True, very true. And there was protests that was happening on all sides. There's protests with the people that are in the Olympics. There's protests with the people with Japanese people that were saying they didn't want all these countries coming into their country for the Olympics because of COVID reasons. And there's people on a lot of sides saying, I'm not watching the Olympics because they're allowing the athletes to disrespect our flag. So there's protests coming from everywhere. It just seems like we can't.
It just seems like, since, I don't know, I'm gonna sound really not retard, that's a bad word. I'm gonna sound
don't get us canceled.
I know. That's I'm old, so we used to be able to say it, but you can't say it anymore. I'm gonna sound really crazy when I say, I don't know, it seems like since George Floyd is all we see is protests.
George who? Oh,
George Floyd.
Yeah.
It just seems like since last year, the summer, all you see, and I know protests have been happening before that, but it just feels like all it is you turn on the news and it's protest.
Yes.
And it's 2 years now of just protesting, but I know protests have always been happening. But I don't know, maybe because we're home and we're able to watch, but it just feels like always is protest.
Or maybe they're seeing the impact of it, because in the 60s, when you think about the 60s when they were protesting and they started getting what they wanted, which was equal treatment. Well, I don't want to say equal rights, voting rights, things of that nature. So protest, and
just like you said,
the people dictate or are supposed to dictate what works and what shouldn't work for the country. And people are
Right.
speaking out about a lot of different things. So
It's
what
called
do
the
you do?
consent of the governed. That's what it's
Yeah,
called. It's the
yeah.
consent. You consent to be governed. And that's an old idea. That's what this country was founded on. People don't really know their history. That's why you and our videos don't go viral, because people don't
No,
care about that. They're like, whatever. But
so
it
what's
really
happening
is.
now?
I know, right? But it is the consent of the governed. You consent to be governed. The people, because the people outweigh government. They
Yeah,
outnumber government. So we have to
definitely.
really agree. We could storm the, well, we seen them storm the Capitol,
Oh
but
my God.
you could like totally, everybody could just decide, I don't want to follow the rules anymore. Everybody could just decide that. Yeah.
Well, let me say the one other political thing that was happening with the Olympics. The Russian team, they're under the Russian Olympic Committee because they can't fly the Russian flag because of a doping scheme that happened in 2011, I think from 2011 through 2015. So they were banned from the Olympics because of that. And the last Olympics, they had to fly under ROC, Russian Olympic Committee, because they didn't want to punish the athletes for and not have them be able to attend when it was the country that was heavily involved in it. So that was another thing that was happening. But some of the salacious things is the fact that there's oh my gosh, Richardson. I can't pronounce her last name, but she smoked weed because her mom had passed away. She smoked weed a few days after her, or during the time that her mom passed away. And they found that in her test results or whatever. And I didn't think that weed was one of the illegal substances that they couldn't take, but apparently it is. I don't know if that changed or if it started.
You probably
but
can't take anything. Can you take anything?
I don't know. I know there's people that do take certain substances and they're allowed, but the key is that people were comparing her to Michael Phelps and how he admitted to smoking weed as well. And he's like the golden boy of the Olympics. When Sha'Carri, that's her name, Sha'Carri Richardson, and she's breaking records all over the place. They banned her for 30 days. So she's not able to compete in certain things because of the weed. And it's a lot of backlash back and forth because they feel like it's being judged differently because she's a Black young woman and a white young man, and it's like there's different rules for different people, and certain behaviors are excused when it's a specific type of person, and it just seemed like they were unfair. And in my opinion, I'm like, that you're about to go to the Olympics, and I know there's pain and all of that involved when you're losing a parent. I can only imagine, but it's almost like you kind of, how you weigh the risk. You're like, well, I'm about to go and do this. Should I really take this chance and have this in my body? And that's where it's like, well, I don't know how they made that decision, but it's like, I don't know, because weed is also legal in a lot of places too. So how do you judge what she was able to take? So I don't know.
Well, remember, when you're grieving, you're not in your right mind, obviously, because otherwise you wouldn't be looking for a substance to make you feel better. So when you're grieving, the things that you would normally think to do. I had a tragic event happen, and when I was grieving, I was not in my right mind. So I did a lot of stupidity. It should have been like, it should be that when you're in a grieving process, you shouldn't be allowed to do anything legally because you're just not in your right mind. And that's another topic. But when you're grieving, so if that was what she said that happened, that's like, she's not that she should be excused, but when we say systemic racism, that's what we mean. The systemic racism, when people deny it and deny white privilege, just move away from the channel right now if you do, because I'm just going to say it exists. It's in every aspect. That's what systemic means. It's in every aspect. And so sports is just another example.
Yeah, and it's so ingrained that people don't even recognize.
You don't recognize it anymore.
Because it's so ingrained. And like I was telling, I was talking to someone about Michael Phelps because they were saying, oh, well, Michael Phelps, he could have spoken out and he could have done this. And I'm like, well, he's not the one that made the decision to say not run her race. It was the committee. So, and he said that, you know, he could have been a bigger voice for her. And that is possibly true. But at the same time, it's like, you know what, they're making a decision based on whatever I don't know. I didn't know.
That's their right. That's their committee. But it's the same. This is a little off comparison, but when Janet Jackson and Justin Timberlake did that show and he exposed her boob, he recently, I want to say it's recent, within whatever amount of time, a year or two, and you know that happened a long time ago, because she was kind of blackballed.
Yeah.
And he came out and said, I should have stood up for her because she took most of the heat. She took all the heat. Yep. As opposed to him taking any heat. He got like, good job, man. And she got like, girl, you trash. So he was like, that was one of his things that he really regretted, was not speaking out at the time in support of her. That's white privilege. And I keep saying it's going to be a broken record. The country was built by and for white males. That's who it was built for. And they have a certain amount of privilege. An extreme amount of privilege. And then every other white people come in, women and whatever, come under that after. But it was white males. And so white males, they don't ever really get the extent of the law. They don't. They don't get the extent of cancellation, the extent of the law. They get the benefit of the doubt. You know,
when it does happen, it feels like reverse racism or reverse discrimination. Now, I mean, we're being discriminated against or we're being canceled because no, you can say and do whatever you want, but it should be or will be a consequence for those.
We're just leveling the playing field.
Yes. No. Well, now speaking of leveling the playing field with Simone Biles, the key with her is she basically dropped out because of her mental issues that she may have been feeling and going through, and she just didn't feel like herself. But when you put in place all the rules to restrict her athleticism and her,
that's why I laughed.
It's almost like you're putting, and she said there's not, her family support is not there. There's no audience. There's no one there cheering her on. Right. The second thing is there's so many restrictions. So a normal athlete is able to run and express themselves and do whatever it is that they do to the best of their ability. Like my husband said, they didn't tell Michael Jordan that he couldn't dunk the ball like that, or since everyone else couldn't, they just said you can aspire to be like that.
I'm going to tell A-Rod, you can only hit 4 home runs today. That's it.
That you can't stifle it. And they stifled what her progress was, because a lot of people can't do what she does. And they also kind of demoted what her moves were, like in point percentages. So you have all of that in your head. You know that they're saying you can't do this, you can't do that. Your family's not there. And it weighs on you mentally. And I know Simone has ADHD, diagnosed as ADHD, and she takes medicine for it as well. Who knows if her medication was off? Who knows if just her, sometimes in conjunction with medicine and for your mental health, you have your support system as well. So who knows where her whatever was off. She said she had the twists, and when you're jumping in the air and flipping 3 times, you have to be in your right state of mind.
That was her main reason for saying she withdrew from it, was because of that. I mean, she said she feels a lot of pressure, and then of course the other side, the privileged people, always got to jump in with their comments. It's like, well, if Tom Brady said that he feels pressure, can he just pull out of the game? Tom Brady's not Simone Biles under that same kind of pressure. First of all, being a Black female in another country, and they're discriminated against you, or in another sport, and they're discriminated against you because you can do something nobody else. They never told him he can't throw the ball in a certain way. They never told him he can't squat, he can't do this, he can't do that. They're not stifling him. Right. The sky is the limit for him. She's being stifled in her art.
Yes. And when you're stifled, like we talked about, I work for the government, and certain things that I want to say, the other video, I was mumbling all over myself because you're stifled and
it's a mess.
Say certain things. So it's like you feel uncomfortable. And when somebody's stifling what you can do or say, it's almost like, well, you kind of get in your own head and you're like, well, and I can only imagine as an artist how she could feel where, okay, I can't do this move, but my body naturally wants to do this move. And to me, that's where we're falling down, because hey, if you can't do this move, aspire to be better, aspire to be better, and just do better.
Because
So,
I think it's, to me, once she's qualified in her weight class, whatever the weight class is, the height, whatever the requirements is for us all to compete in the same category.
yes.
Once you tell me, okay, it's not like she's an adult and the rest of them are children. You know, like, oh, you beat me. That's no fair. She's bigger than me. It's not like that. She has qualified in whatever the criteria is for her to do what she do. And you are saying you qualify the same way I am. Like when I was teaching, there was people like, oh, this one is always getting good accolades for their teaching. And I'm like, well, then teach better. I'm not going to dumb down my teaching because you feel slighted.
Yeah, don't. And you shouldn't dull your shine for anyone. And that's the problem. And it's, first of all, Simone is like the smallest on the team. She's like 4'1". I mean, probably not that short, but she's really little. And it's like her body and what she could do is so amazing. And it was so crazy that she said, I hope America still loves me after all that she's achieved, because she's dropping out for her own state of mind and for her own well-being. She's worried about what we think and how we feel. And that's just crazy. But one of the other accolades that we had gotten, the USA had gotten, is the first Asian American woman had won the gold in gymnastics. And so shout out to Suni, she won the gold.
Yeah, I saw that. That I did see.
It was emotional, and it's just like, it just seems like, one thing about America when it comes to the Olympics, you never know what you're gonna get. You have Black, you have white, you have Asian, you have Spanish, you have every Indian, Native American, Muslim. You have so many different representations.
You know what I think is interesting about that? It just shows that, I think it proves to those who are trying to keep people of color down, it proves to them their point, which is, if you level the playing field, they're gonna outdo us. Sorry, if you mad, you can also swipe off this video. It's true. If you level the playing field, we're gonna do our part. If you level the playing field.
But just imagine if you were the one that had the higher ground, wouldn't it be scary to you? Like, okay, well, now I got to work on my game. I got to work even harder.
Do something.
I can't coast now. So it is, I'm sure it is scary, but I always say and feel that diversity is our biggest strength in this country. And I mean, one of the last things I wanted to go over or discuss was the fact that it feels like, watching the games, that it feels like the USA is losing its dominance in sports, like with basketball, with tennis, with and some of the greats. If you look at it, a lot of the great Black women are like, you know what? I'm not stressing myself out over this. I'm gonna do for me.
I know with baseball players and some other players, I think maybe even basketball and stuff, they don't want to go to those kind of things, possibly get injured and lose their quote unquote real career life. So I can understand if you feel like, it's different. It's not gymnastics. It's different. Like if you're a baseball player or basketball player in a team, a major league baseball team, and then you go into the Olympics, you could get injured.
Like, why am I going to be here? What am I? And a lot of basketball players kind of felt the same way. LeBron James didn't go. You think about some of the athletes, Serena Williams, Coco Gauff, none of them went. Even Osaka, she went, but she's playing for Japan, which we talked about how they kind of looked at her like she was crazy for representing
where she was born from, or her family, her lineage.
Her she's half Black, Black Haitian and half Japanese. So what? I mean, hey, what is she? 9'1"? Like,
don't get it.
Us over them. But I mean, what do you do? But I do feel like, looking at the Olympics, we are losing a little bit of our dominance in certain areas, certain sports. But hey, it's one of the things that we do as a family. We like to watch. We watch the prime time sports and things like that, and just enjoy it during those 2 weeks of every 4 years. Well, it's the 5th year, but hey, so let us know, guys, what you think about the Olympics and what you've been watching so far. And don't forget to like, follow, subscribe.
Yes.
We're on Insta, Twitter, Facebook at under Tea Poly Chicks, and you can email us at teapolychicks@gmail.com. So bye guys.
All right, bye guys.